So after Peace Corps, I went to Tufts University School of Nutrition Science and Policy, and really focused on storytelling, trying to tell the stories of the farmers that I've met all over the world and really amplify what they're doing in my own small way.
Food, like life, can be complicated. That's why I'm on a quest to learn all about our food and the crimes, issues, and debates that are tied to it. I hope you'll join me on my quest to explore the dark side of dining. Food. You can't live without it. Food is a part of everything, from our day-to-day meals to holiday traditions and special occasions, to snacks and everything in between. We use food to express our love, care for others, and bond. There's a reason the person who provides is called the breadwinner. And yet most of us don't give all that much thought to where our food comes from, how it's made, or how it gets to us. We just go to the store or the local McDonald's, buy what we need, and eat. The truth is, our food systems are riddled with issues, controversies, and yes, even crime. Food, like life, can be complicated. That's why I've started my quest to understand food better with a conversation with Danielle "Danny" Nierenberg, the president of Food Tank. Danny has been involved in our food systems for many years, but I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks so much for having me, Kenneth. So again, Danny Nierenberg, I'm president and co-founder of Food Tank. Food Tank is a research and advocacy organization. We're really devoted to highlighting stories of hope and success in food and agriculture systems across the globe. And we do this with the aim to inspire, motivate, and ultimately activate positive transformation in how we produce and consume food.
Danny's organization is all about highlighting stories of hope and success in our food systems, both locally and globally. But she didn't always care about food and where it comes from. In fact, for a while, she wanted nothing to do with agriculture because of where she grew up. But her journey to caring for food and becoming an advocate for our food is a fascinating one.
So it's a long story. I'm from a very small town called Defiance, Missouri. So I grew up around farmers. My parents were not farmers. And I couldn't wait to get out of there. My parents, I was a very lucky child. I had a pony, I raised pigeons and rabbits and, all sorts of stuff. And, I think my parents wanted to raise me in the fresh air. I wanted to get out of there. I didn't like farmers. I wanted nothing to do with them. And then after college, I became a Peace Corps volunteer and had this very slow epiphany about how important farmers were to protecting the environment, nourishing us all, and just, all of the things that they do to make the world better. And so, it reminded me that the farmers I grew up with were really important. So after Peace Corps, I went to Tufts University School of Nutrition Science and Policy, and, really focused on storytelling, trying to tell the stories of the farmers that I've met all over the world and really amplify what they're doing in my own small way. So that's what got me here.
Danny went from wanting nothing to do with farmers or agriculture to being one of the leading thought leaders in the world of food. In 2013, she founded Food Tank with her friend Bernard Pollock, establishing it as, quote, a nonprofit organization focused on building a global community for safe, healthy, nourished eaters. In her work with Food Tank, she has had incredible opportunities to travel the world and experience firsthand some of the issues facing farmers and our food supplies. So I asked her about what issues are currently most pressing. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain. What are some of the more pressing issues in the food system that you're aware of right now?
Yeah, so I've had this wonderful honor and opportunity to visit farmers all over the world. And I was most recently earlier this month in Ethiopia. And, looking at how farmers, smallholders who are farming on about, 0.25 hectares, which is a very small plot of land, and some of the very diverse farming systems that they're implementing. But I think what's striking me the most right now is that farmers like the ones I'm at in Ethiopia and farmers all over the world are really struggling right now. They're struggling because of cuts to the U.S. Agency for International Development. It's total dismantling. They're suffering because of the climate crisis and, its continuing effects, especially in places right now like the European Union, where wildfires have ravaged farmland across the continent. They're seeing sort of I think in our food and agriculture systems, we're seeing a lack of hope and a lack of investment. So there are a lot of things that are really top of mind for me right now that, make it hard for me to do my job, to tell those positive stories when so much is sort of hitting farmers and our food and agriculture systems all at once.
The struggling of Ethiopian farmers from climate issues and wildfires in the European Union are just a few of the many issues involving food worldwide. As I've learned more about such issues, it's easy to grow discouraged and wonder if there's any hope, which is why I am thankful for organizations like Dani's Food Tank that offer some hope. So I just had to ask her for a bit of hope. Okay, so kind of going towards that hopeful idea, what are some of the things being done right now to fix those issues, or just what are some good things being done to help with food?
I'll go back to Ethiopia for a second, and we can talk about the United States. The diversity I mentioned, farmers who formerly, just 3 or 4 years ago were growing just starchy staple crops, with the help of a research organization called CIMMYT and some local nonprofits, are now growing, through using conservation agriculture, a range of crops. So they're not just growing maize or corn, they're growing maize along with legumes, along with enset, which is an indigenous vegetable that, helps them through the hunger season. They're, growing things at different levels so that, they have food throughout the year. And they're using mixed crop livestock systems. So they have, livestock as sort of an insurance policy, right? If your crops fail, you have your livestock, right? And then in the United States, I have the pleasure of really working closely with a lot of organizations, or being able to amplify their stories, like the National Young Farmers Coalition, which is doing some really important work around state and regional legislation to help young farmers, especially young farmers of color, because they often face a lot of barriers, including lack of access to land, the inability to pay off their student loans or get health insurance. So, trying to amplify what the National Young Farmers do and other organizations like them, those are some bright spots that I am always so happy to see.
So while there is a lot to be concerned about, there is hope. There are people hard at work to improve the food situations that affect people worldwide and locally. And in fact, it's not just the special people like Dani that are hard at work trying to improve things who can have a positive effect. You too can make an impact. Here's what Dani had to say about why we should all care about our food. So here's kind of the big question, I guess. Why is it important that people be aware of the issues surrounding their food?
Yeah, we all eat, right, Kenneth? I think we all, if we care about, some of the things I already mentioned, whether it's the climate crisis or poverty or lack of access to land, all of that goes back to really caring about food and agriculture. We should all sort of, be aware of how our food is grown and why and where it comes from, and the struggles that food and farm workers go through to get food to our plates. And I think we should really have that top of mind, that there are a lot of hands that touch our food before it gets into our kitchens or on our plates at restaurants, and really recognizing and honoring that work is really important.
We all eat, right? Food is not just something for far-off people. It is something each of us needs and ought to value. So I asked Dani for some ideas on what we can do to help with food issues. So what are some things that, our average listener of the podcast, they're probably not farmers, they're probably not, super involved in this. What are some things that they could do to help or be more aware of these issues? Like what can the average Joe do? Sure.
There are so many things all of us can do. I've seen so much momentum and awareness over the last decade and a half around food loss and food waste. This is something we all have control over in our own kitchens. And, I think that's something where we can all make a positive difference. Buy less, don't always believe those best buy or expiration dates. Use your senses to see if a food has gone bad. If you can look at it and smell it and it seems okay, you're probably going to be okay.
Now, I just have to cut in here because this first piece of advice really hit me in particular. See, I will fully admit that I am one of those people that sees that my food is expired by just one day and insists that we throw it out just in case. But after hearing Danny say that we should rely on our senses to judge more than an arbitrary best by date, I think I'll try to be a little more forgiving of my food. Danny had even more ideas to add to the conversation.
So, learning to use ingredients differently, realizing that, the scraps of vegetables aren't always scraps, that they can be delicious if they're just utilized in a different way. There are all these great cookbooks about, using food that would otherwise go wasted. So try some different things. I think that's always, it's a lot of folks tell people, grow something, grow a pot of basil or something. Not everyone wants to do that, right? Not everyone, wants to take care of something, but you can prevent food waste almost every day.
Now, I love this second piece of advice to learn to use ingredients differently because this idea really sits close to my heart. I lived in Italy for a couple of years right after high school, and if you didn't know, the Italian people are really good at stretching whatever ingredients they are given into delicious meals. While I was there, I learned to cook in their style, which included learning to adapt whatever ingredients we had on hand into our next best meal. But I'm not perfect at it, as I'm sure most people aren't. So I asked Danny what sources there may be that can help us to learn to reduce food waste. So what would be some sources to learn how to better avoid food waste? You mentioned vegetable scraps might not actually be, actual waste, could be used. What are some sources to help with that?
Yeah, there's some really great websites out there and organizations. One is the Food Recovery Network, which works with young folks on college campuses. They have a whole list of resources on their website that help people sort of get started, and whether it's in a small way in their own kitchen or if it's in a big way by trying to prevent waste on college campuses.
I'll include a link to the Food Recovery Network in the show notes for whoever wants to learn more and get involved locally. As we were finishing up our conversation, I asked Danny whether there was anything she wanted to bring up that we hadn't talked about. And here's what she had to say.
I will talk about one thing that I think is close to my heart. And again, going back to Ethiopia just for a minute, because I was just there were so many badass women farmers who I saw who were doing incredible work. And, women farmers are often ignored. They're not invested in as much as their male counterparts. And just recognizing the important role that women farmers play in producing food around the globe is really important, especially here in the United States. Women farmers, young women farmers especially, are face a lot of challenges, but there's so much opportunity if they have the investment and the resources behind them. So I just wanted to highlight that, something always close to my heart, making sure that young folks can get involved in agriculture in different ways. That's something I feel strongly about as well, because again, I really look at our food and agriculture systems as opportunities. They're an opportunity to nourish ourselves for sure, but also to nourish the planet and make sure that we're doing things in a really sustainable, regenerative way. I think it's important to recognize, again, we all eat, we all have a say in this. Food Tank likes to call some of our listeners citizen eaters, right? You every day you can make choices, whether it's who you vote for or what you're buying at the supermarket, to make the food system better.
Every day we make choices, and it's up to us to be informed in those choices. That's ultimately why I've started this podcast, because I wanted to learn more about my food and everything that's wrapped up in it, and share what I'm learning with you. Danny gave me a rapid-fire list of places we can learn more, which I'll include in the show notes. I really hope you'll come along with me as we take a deep dive into the complexities of our food, because it's up to us to be citizen eaters who are informed and ready to make an impact. After all, knowledge never tasted so good. The Dark Side of Dining is a production of Food for Thought Audio. This episode was written, produced, and edited by me, Kenny Mears. I'd like to thank today's guest, Danielle Nierenberg, for sharing her insights with us. You can learn more about her work with Food Tank at foodtank.com or on social media. Links will be in the show notes. As always, thanks for your comments. We read them all. And until next time, thanks for listening.